Good day, everyone. My name is Addison Villaneres, and we are Group 4. Today, we are going to discuss about individual versus social identity online. So, I'm going to state our objectives first. First is know the difference between individual and social self. And the second one is know our online identities. So, let's start first with individual identity. What is our individual identity? When we say about individual identity, we we can think of different questions. Like, who are we? Who are you? Are you the same you 1 week ago, a year ago, or 10 years ago? So, in individual identity, there is what we call the past self, our present self, and our future self. But how can we connect all of this to our present time? So I'm going to state the meaning of self-identity. So self-identity sets us apart as distinct individuals. Self-identity defines our unique sense of ourselves and our relationship to the outside world. So meaning that we we are different, all of us are different. We have different personalities, characteristics, we have different skills and talents. That's what makes us different. And in dictionaries, they define self as the conscious recognition of the self as having a unique identity, as what I've said. And all of us are unique because we have different sets of abilities that we can do, like how we see the world, how what we want to do to help, things like that. We have different ideas, we have different we have different ideas of the things that we will do. It is an awareness of and identification with oneself as a separate individual. All of us are different. So let's go back to the past self, present self, and future self. So our past self is our past self is our identity that that we that we had before, but that past self has grown over time, and that will be our present self, our present identity. And our present identity, as time goes by, it will become a new identity as the future, as what we call now the future identity, and our present identity will now become our past identity. So a great example of this is that if someone, let's give a name, for example, John. John is a is a basketball player. He always plays in a basketball court. He always plays with his friends. He and then he likes to smoke. He likes to do all that stuff that teenagers do. But as he grew older, and then he realized some stuff that he needs to do. Now John is a married man. He has kids. He has a job, and he takes care of his kids. So that is a example of the past and present identity, meaning that we change over time. And as I've said, individual identity is unique. All of us are unique. So for example of this is that a student, we can say that he or she likes anime, he or she likes K-pop, and he or she isn't the same as everyone in the room or in the school, because in today's generation, we can see that most teenagers likes to drink, likes to smoke. They use vape because they think that it's cool, but because this student, because he or she likes K-pop, so he or she will remain a K-pop and anime fan because he or she views himself or herself as unique from the others, meaning that he doesn't want to give in to the pressure to the differences of his or her environment. That's what sets him or him or her as different from the rest, because he or she recognized that he or she has a unique identity. Is a separate sep- is separate from different individuals. This is very important. So let's go to the next slide. Why is individual identity important? Maintaining self-identity is important because it strengthens your character. That is, when we know who we are, have confidence in ourselves, and are able to identify our strength, we emerge as stronger individuals. Secondly, it keeps us unique and distinguishes from everyone else. So that is the example that I have stated before. It is very important to be unique, to be different, but not so different that it causes problems for others. Meaning that you are different in a way that it can it can it can benefit yourself and others. For example, like building a good relationship with others. When some people always say that that different individuals, like, they have different personalities, like their personalities is completely what you call this, different from each other. Like, for example, one is a studio student and the other one always likes to play. But sometimes when those two unique people meet, they form a good relationship because they complement each other. Like, one is good, and one is, what you call this, maybe active, and funny. That is a very good combination of any relationship. So when our self-identity, we need to maintain our self-identity. We need to be unique, we need to be different from others, so that it can strengthen our character, it can strengthen who we are, and we will have more confidence in ourselves. And when we have more confidence in ourselves, we have the different ideas to be more helpful. We have an idea for ourselves, and we stand up for that idea, and we stand up for ourselves. Because uniqueness isn't bad. Just because you don't fit in a community or a group doesn't mean that it is a bad thing. Because sometimes being different and unique makes us stronger, and it is very, very important. So now that we know what individual identity is, this individual identity is our offline self. So let's go to our online self, the online individual identity. So in online individual identity, it is also very similar to our individual identity in the real world, not in the internet. So it also means that in online we have different personalities, we have different characteristics, like how we chat with others, how we communicate with them, and what makes us happy. And in the internet, for example, if an example of this is when a person likes to share many shared posts, and that shared post is maybe related to anime, politics, to K-pop. That is a individual identity, meaning that they have an individual identity of what they want, and what they want to see, and what they want to do online. And that is the individual identity online. It also means that you have a different characteristic than others, even though it is also online. And another example of this is when you play games. Like, maybe when you play a game, you like to You like to talk with your teammates, and maybe you like to be silent and just focus on the game. That is a individual identity online.
Social identity is a person's sense of who they are based on their membership. This means that the people's social class, family, football team, etc., which people belongs to, were an important source of pride and self-esteem. Groups give us a sense of social identity, a sense of belonging to the social world. Social identity theory, introduced by psychologists Henry Tajfel and John Turner in 1970s, describe the cognitive process related to the social identity and how social identity impacts intergroups behavior. Generally, individuals wish to maintain a positive social identity by maintaining their group's favorable social standing over their of relevant groups. Thus, social identity refers to the ways that people's self-concept are based on their membership in social groups. Example, including sports team, religions, nationalities, occupations, sexual orientation, ethnic groups, and gender. Social identity relates to how we identify ourselves in relation to others according to what we have in common. For example, we can identify ourselves according to religion or where we're from. An Asian American, Southerner, New Yorker, or a politician affiliation, a Democrat, environmentalist, or a vocation, which writer, artist, neurosurgeon, or a relationship like mother, father, or a great aunt. In addition, some identities are stigmatized. Person with AIDS, homeless person, alcoholic, and many social identities can be multiple, like an Asian American Democratic who works as a writer. Together, the different roles a person plays can help him realize his overall identity. Social identity can provide people with a sense of self-esteem and a framework for socializing, and it can influence their behavior. Experiment carried out by Henry Tajfel and John Turner, it was found that people favored the members of their own group regardless whether the assignments to the group was based on the famous commonality or even it was arbitrary. In addition to how you view yourself, social identity also influences how other people treat you. Social identity theory explains that they derive esteem from a group that they positively identify with, therefore they favored it. They allocate more resources to the in-group to maximize the difference between their in-group and out-group in order to achieve such identification. This is a psychological basis for ethnocentrism, a common concept in intellectual communication. Ethnocentrism is a widely observed belief that one's own ethnic group is superior to the other ethnic groups. This process of having one's in-group happens in three stages: social categorization, social identification, and social comparison. People first categorize themselves and others into social groups based on external or internal criteria. Then, people identify with a group and invest emotionally and change their behavior to some extent because of their membership. Finally, people compare their groups to others in order to acquire esteem for their identified membership. This process leads to the maximization of similarities within a group and the difference between groups.
Good day, I'm Emmanuel Biagodo, and I'm here to report social identity theory and the three stages of social identity theory. Social identity theory, proposed by Tajfel and Turner in 1986, suggests that individuals experience collective identity based on their membership in a group, such as racial, ethnic, and gender identities. Henry Tadgefeld and John Turner are social psychologists that propose the social identity theory. This theory suggests that an individual shows a different sense of oneself depending on a specific group of people. We can all relate to this when we portray a different personality when we are with friends. On the other hand, we show off different personality when we are with family. In the aspect of racial situations, we behave differently when we are with our co-Filipinos than the foreigners. This theory proves that we, humans, have the rational ability to blend with different types of groups of people. Next is the 3 stages of social identity theory. Social categorization. It is the process by which people categorize themselves and others into differentiated groups. So there are 3 stages of social identity theory. The first one is the social categorization, which can help youngsters simplify and understand their social world. But it can also lead to stereotyping, prejudice, and discrimination. Examples of social categories include age group, sex, and race. Like a group of high school students, a group of senior citizens, a group of females, and a group of males, and etc.
In-group is a social group to which a person psychologically identifies as being a member. A group with which one feels a sense of solidarity or community of interests. In-group, out-group. As in in-group is a group of people who identify with each other based on a variety of factors including gender, race, religion, or geography. Our tendency to distinguish between in-group and out-group members has moral implications. People may harm those whom they perceive to be in an out-group in ways that they would not harm in-group members. For example, one study showed that people when soccer fans view fans of their own team being harmed, they felt empathy, but when they view fans of a rival team being similarly harmed, they felt pleasure. Likewise, people tend to make different moral judgment based on in-group and out-group distinctions. When someone in our in-group misbehaves, the natural reaction is often to dismiss the behavior as no big deal. But when someone in our out-group does the same thing, we will tend to judge the behavior much more harshly. Indeed, when automatic in-group and out-group distinctions replace conscious and thoughtful reflection, we are more likely to harm one another and behave unethically.
Hello, my name is Ralph Lawrence Aloy, and I'm going to discuss the next social categorization, which is the outgroup. So, outgroup. Outgroup is a social group with which an individual does not identify. People may, for example, identify with their peer group, family, community, sports team, political party, gender, race, religion, or nation. It has been found that the psychological membership of social groups and categories is associated with a wide variety of phenomena. So, the behavior of these people in the outgroup is that they feel outcasted, they do not belong in the group, or they may feel different from the others. That's why an individual does not identify. So, this happens in many different groups. I think the reason there is the individual. He or she may not be a sociable person. He or she may have difficulties in interacting people, or they may be a conflicts too. That's why they don't identify them in specific groups. These groups can be switched to in-group. We just encourage them. we will let them feel that they belong to us and they are loved among those differences. So, in addition, there are also discrimination against outgroups. In-group favoritism and out-group discrimination are often viewed as two sides of the coin. We say two sides of the same coin. However, research has shown that this is not necessarily the case. There is not a systematic relationship between the positive perception of one in-group and the negative perception of out-groups. Helping in-group members while withholding such help from out-group members differs significantly from actively working to harm out-group members. In-group favoritism can result in negative outcomes, from prejudice and stereotypes to institutional racism and sexism. However, such favoritism does not always lead to hostility towards outgroups. Research demonstrates that in-group favoritism and out-group discrimination are distinct phenomena, and one does not necessarily predict the other. So, the next stage of social identity theory is the social identification. Social identification reflects the notion that people generally do not perceive social situations as detached observers. Instead, their own sense of who they are and who they relate to others is typically implicated in the way they view other individuals and groups around them. So, the second process, social identification, is the process of identifying as a group member. Socially identifying with a group leads individuals to behave in the way that they believe members of the group should behave. For instance, if an individual defines herself as an environmentalist, she may try to conserve water, recycle whenever possible, and march in rallies for climate change awareness. Through this process, people become emotionally invested in their group memberships. Consequently, their self-esteem is impacted by the status of their groups.
Social comparison is comprehensive and fundamentals feature of group life. People compare themselves with fellow group members. They compare themselves with people in other groups, and they compare their own groups with their groups by evaluating their own attitudes and traits in comparison with others. In most of cases, we can try to compare ourselves to be those in our peer group or with whom we are similarities. In social identity theory, in social physiology, the study of the interplay between personal and social identities. Social identity theory aims to specify and predict the circumstance under which individuals think of themselves as individual or as a group members. The theory is also considered the consequence of personal and social identities for individual participation and group behavior. For example, the first is social comparison is a normal behavior strategy where we can seek to be better understand to our status relating to ability, opinion, emotional reaction, and more by comparing ourselves to other people. And the next is social comparison can be useful because it provides us with way to determine if we are on track, but it can be also extremely harmful and results in negative thoughts and behavior. And the next is I always pay a lot of attention to how I do things compared to how others do things. And the next example is, I always like to know what other similarities in situation would I do. And the last example is, a music student might be compare herself to other star student in the other class. If she that her not ability do not measure up her per talents, she might be driven to achieve more, improve her abilities. And the last example is, when you compare yourself to your friends, you might feel you are pretty physically fit, so you might sign up a marathon by believing that you have the ability to finish with no problem. And
Now let's proceed with online identity. Internet identity, also known as online identity or internet persona, is a social identity that an internet users establish in online communities and websites, although some people choose to use their real names online. Some internet users prefer to be anonymous, identifying themselves by means of pseudonyms, which reveal varying amount of personally identifiable information. An online identity may even be determined by a user's relationship to a certain social group they are part of online. Some can even be deceptive about their identity. Identity is information of an entity used by a computer system to represent an external agent. That agent may be a person, organization, application, or a device. An online identity can be as permanent as an offline one. Pseudonymous users often identify themselves in different social networks using the same account name. But because their handles aren't based on their real names, they can deliberately delineate their identity accordingly and reassert anonymity if they wish. Psychologists argue that this is available for the development of a sense of who one is, who one can be, and how one fits into different contexts. This kind of activity is allowed even in countries where social networks accounts holders are required to register for the service using a national ID, as in South Korea and China. Their online public identities are still fabrication. Even with this explicit link with the state, when users are aware that their activities online are traceable, identity plays continue. Wherever you use social networks, send a text, or post online, you're adding to your online identity. Your online identity may be different from your real-world identity. The way your friends, parents, and teachers think of you. Trying on different personas is part of fun in online life. You can change the way you act and present yourself to others, and you can learn more about things that interest you. And just as real life, you can take steps to help you stay in control. But remember that nothing is temporary online. The online world is full of changes to interact and share with others. It's also a place where nothing is temporary and there are no take-backs. A lot of what you do and say online can be seen even if you delete it. And it's a breeze for others to copy, save, and forward your information. That's all.
Difference between individual and social identity. So, individual identity is about how you see yourself as different from those around you. And social identities tell how you are like others. They indicate similarity rather than difference. So, individual identity. For this, you will focus on what are the things that nobody has. For example, your talents, hobbies, and experience in life. And especially our personalities, you will differentiate it with other people. And individual identity is the concept you develop about yourself that evolves over the course of your life. This may include aspects of your life that you have no control over, such as where you grow up or the color of your skin, as well as choices you make in life, such as how you spend your time and what you believe. That is individual identity all about. And social identity refers to a person's membership in a social group. The common groups that comprise a person's social identity include age, ability, race, gender, sexual orientation, and religion. As a result of your social identity, you are actually a member of an in-group and out-group. And also the social identities, that is the opposite in individual identity, because social identity is how you will see the similarities of yourself with other people. For example, gender, religion, and disabilities and ability. Our identity is affected less and less by what we produce and more by what we consume. So this quote is very relatable in our topic because this quote reminds us about our identity and it let us know that our identity will depend our surroundings or the people that we are facing or dealing in our daily lives.